If you're with us on the internet, or if you're here sitting in the chairs around me, we are one community, united in our commitment to each other and our commitment to live out our principles in the world. As we begin today, I want to remind you to please silence your cell phones. And for the comfort of those of us with sensitivity to perfumes, please avoid the seats in this section right over here if you are wearing perfumes or heavily scented products. Thank you. And be mindful of the variety of interaction levels preferred by the people in our community here, indicated by those who wear red, yellow, or green wristbands.
The paradox of hospitality is that it wants to create emptiness, not a fearful emptiness, but a friendly emptiness, where strangers can enter and discover themselves as created free. Hospitality is not a subtle invitation to adore the lifestyle of the host, but it's a gift of a chance for the guest to find his own. Henri Nouwen.
Our hymn is number 361 in your gray hymnal, Enter, Rejoice, and Come In. And we will do verse 1. Please rise in body or spirit and join me in singing the first verse of Welcome, Rejoice, and Come In. Enter, rejoice, and come in. Enter, rejoice, and come in. Today will be a joyful day. Enter, rejoice, and come in.
In Ireland, you go to someone's house and she asks you if you want a cup of tea. You say, no, thank you. You're really just fine. She asks if you're sure. You say, of course you're sure. Really, you don't need a thing. Except they pronounce it ting. You don't need a ting. Well, she says, I was going to get myself some anyway, so it would be no trouble. Ah, you say, well, if you're going to get yourself some, I wouldn't mind a spot of tea at that, so long as it's no trouble and I can give you a hand in the kitchen. Then you go through the whole thing all over again until you both end up in the kitchen drinking tea and chatting. In America, someone asks you if you want a cup of tea, you say no, and then you don't get any darn tea. I like the Irish way better.
Come to this community with all that you are. Your joys and your concerns are welcome here. We share our moments of joys and sorrows with each other using these candle cards. If you're with us here in person, and you can also email candle card to the Reverend Tiffany at minister@hvууc.org if you are remote. So please make sure to indicate, if you do that on the subject line, whether or not you would like the card read aloud in the service, which is being broadcast publicly on YouTube. We do have one announcement too. We're sad to share with you that that Eric Anderson, Reverend Tiffany's father, passed away on Thursday from complications following surgery. He felt no pain or fear, and his last conscious act was to make someone laugh. Reverend Tiffany will be spending focused time with her family this week, and a celebration of life is, as I understand it, going to happen in Roan Mountain in the Eric C. Anderson Park in Roan Mountain on Saturday, we believe, perhaps at 2. So that details will be posted more if they change or become more available. And another announcement is that there is a meal train for the Anderson family just for this week. And Joy, over there with her hand raised, if you can call her, contact her, or email her if you would like to be part of that meal train. So if you want a candle to be lit for yourself today, for a loved one, for yourself, for a situation that's close to your heart, I invite you to let us know now, to make that request by either standing or raising your hand when we sing Love and Kindness here in just a moment. I'll acknowledge you with a motion of my hand, and you can sit down or lower your hand after I acknowledge you. So we light the first candle for those who are not in the building, but who are forever in our hearts and our minds. And we light a final candle for all that remains unspoken in our hearts and our minds. Thank you. Singularity by Marie Howe after Stephen Hawking. Do you sometimes want to wake up to the singularity we once were? So compact, nobody needed a bed or food or money. Nobody hiding in the school bathroom or home alone, pulling open the drawer where the pills are kept. For every atom belonging to me as good belongs to you, remember? There was no nature, no them, no tests to determine if the elephant grieves her calf or if the coral reef feels pain. Trashed oceans don't speak English or Farsi or French. Would that we could wake up to what we were when we were ocean, and before that, to when sky was earth, and animal was energy, and rock was liquid, and stars were space, and space was not at all nothing. Before we came to believe humans were so important, before this awful loneliness. Can molecules recall it? What once was, before anything happened? No I, no we, no one, no was, no verb, no noun, only a tiny, tiny dot brimming with is, all, everything, home. Just like a poem, a melody can speak to a part of us deeper than words. Harmonies can soothe a weary soul. Lyrics can often say the words we struggle to find. Today's musical gift is Kind and Generous by Natalie Merchant, performed by Jodi with a little help from Rosemary.
Thank you, Jodi and Rosemary. I was part of the Radical Hospitality as a Spiritual Practice Covenant group that met here at the church. And we talked about what radical hospitality means and how it merges with our UU principles. We are a diverse community. We often say with pride that we celebrate our diversity, but celebration can be less than fulfilling if we don't know each other's stories. Understanding can deepen our commitment to each other and our principles and enable us to grow both individually and as a community. Covenant groups nurture that growth. Sign up for one. When I was 4 to 7 years old, there were 12 kids in 5 houses in our inner city neighborhood, and all but my 2 brothers and I were home alone or in the charge of older siblings during the day, while single moms or both parents worked. In the summer, my mother would fix lunch. She'd call, and all 12 kids would come tumbling to the back of our house and sit in the backyard and eat lunch together. I thought it was great having a picnic every day of the summer, and it wasn't till many years later that I realized my mother was doing hospitality as a spiritual practice. Those kids had somebody looking after them. My dad, a minister, started with a salary of less than $2,000, and every once in a while the congregation would have a potluck and bring us groceries and other needed items. My brothers and I thought it was a great time, a good party, and I did not realize how humbling it must have been for my parents, but they accepted the gifts with grace. Kim Thomas says in her book, Potluck, that your response to hospitality when it is given is part of the spiritual practice. In the search for our new pastor, Tiffany, over and over again, people mentioned that community is of great importance to them. Didn't they, Cindy? We were on that committee. I was thinking about just that when I was reading the book, Gifts of the Spirit. The author says, we rejoice in our communal existence and we gather in churches, synagogues, mosques, temples, zindos, and ashrams to celebrate together the mysteries of life. I began to think maybe there is more than social advantage to community. Perhaps there is a spiritual dimension to being in community. The next sentence jumped off the page. No virtuous action matters more than hospitality. Really? Hospitality? Are there spiritual roots in this statement? Judaism, Christianity, and Islam all have hospitality's religious roots in the story of Abraham inviting and welcoming the strangers in from the desert. Mother Teresa told us when we approach a beggar, we see him cloaked in rags, but should also see him as cloaked in the dignity of a human being with a divine spark. Hospitality addresses the physical needs of food, shelter, and protection, but it also radically affirms the high worth and common humanity of all people. A Christian might say, to see him as Christ. A Buddhist could say, a potential bodhisattva. In ancient Israel, hospitality was a biblical law and specifically sanctified hospitality toward the stranger. And we all know Jesus' story of the Good Samaritan. We are not talking Martha Stewart here, but something much more radical. Hospitality, as presented in the sacred text, is not just a practice. It is a way of life, a whole world view. I found quotes from sacred texts of Judaism, Christianity, Islam, Taoism, Hinduism, and Buddhism, as well as quotes from the oral traditions of African and Native American religions. They all subscribe to hospitality. Historically, hospitality was a subversive act that obliterated societal barriers involving gender, race, economic condition, and citizenship status. The extension of hospitality was a moral statement. In the 4th and 5th centuries, resources flowed into the church, and hospitality became viewed as a public service. It became an industry rather than an intimate ministry, and the moral dimension of hospitality was lost. Saint Benedict started a monastery with rules, now called the Rule of Benedict, and it is used in almost all monasteries, including Buddhist monasteries. It is radical hospitality and means welcoming all people without exception, and especially any in an opposed or oppressed group. As a church, we have an obligation to be hospitable to visitors, but it grows our own soul as well. I never really thought of church work days or setting up for coffee hour or washing dishes as a spiritual practice. But when you do that and provide a place and opportunity for our congregation to practice hospitality in such a way, indeed it is. Some feel that tolerance is the key for a pluralistic society, but tolerance is a virtue that falls short. Have you ever been tolerated? Hospitality requires mutual recognition, respect, and response, rather than the simple indifference into which tolerance often degenerates. Response is the final demand of hospitality and may be the most challenging. It is an internal response. It asks us to allow other views to challenge our own. To me, this fits exactly with UU principles. Welcoming the others is not merely good manners and a sign of civility. It is an expression of faith and an act of worship. At this point, conversation becomes a form of prayer. Life offers infinite opportunities to extend hospitality in one form or another, as we are about to hear. Hospitality is worship for those who understand its inner significance and potential.
When we talk about hospitality, too often a bit of guilt creeps in, doesn't it? It may feel a little forced, like a call to action. Oh, I should have done that for them. I should have had them over. Oh, we should have done this and the other good and generous thing. And though I'm fairly sure there's nothing wrong with a little motivational guilt once in a while, all those shoulds can kind of lead to despair. So I do want to mention all the things that I know that we as a congregation already do or have done. Some of the many commitments of hospitality and generosity we have made over the years. Knowing what we have done and continue to do, the list of guilty shoulds can be erased, and we can also make it easier to do it again, now that we're open and active, more or less. Back in the early 90s, our much smaller than church congregation hosted for most of a year a Ukrainian family as they settled here. Congregants opened their homes and purses to help these folks get launched in a new life. Our Macho group, which stands for Men Achieving Community Helping Others, and of course their mighty muscles, has helped a myriad of others over the years of their working together, from house remodeling to assisting in moving to taming our own church's backyard 1,000 times. For years, teams of volunteers from our church have supported host churches in the Family Promise program. In both Johnson City and Kingsport, about 3 times a year, we purchase, prepare, and share a meal with local unhoused families at one of the host churches. Then we also provide a sleepover couple of volunteers who are on night watch and breakfast duty for those families. The Kitchen of Hope in Kingsport has continued throughout the pandemic. Our role has been to buy, prepare, and serve a hot meal for between 100 and 160 hungry folks. Lively teams of volunteers from our congregation show up once a month to support and share in offering our hospitality. Our donations from all of us also help making the buying of the food possible. Our caring team routinely sends food cards and organizes meal trains with great attention and love to those who are on our list. Here in our building, we collect food, asking for your donations that's given to area food pantries. You tripped over the bucket on the way in. And to those who might show up here, who might be hungry. Sometimes they come to our door. Sunday school children have designated their collections for schoolgirls in Malawi and for saving the rainforest. Supporting our own delight in each other's company is a spiritual practice, too. Making and serving coffee and snacks on a Sunday morning brings us together in deeper connection, as will the Wednesday night suppers and potluck Sundays when they get going again. We'll have more chances to communicate soon. Serving on our board of directors is an act of great generosity. People shoulder this responsibility with love. Unmeasurable amounts of time, patience, and wisdom are called on to lead us in our ongoing work of being a place of love and connection. A whole staff of volunteers offer their time and talents to teach in our RE program. Adults and children are welcomed and planned for. Great ideas and noble messes are made as we share times together. The very presence of our congregation in this time and place serves as an act of hospitality to many. Together, we offer and support this place of refuge, kindness, and honesty. We have studied and been attentive to LGBTQ issues and are called a welcoming congregation. Hopefully, we feel like one, too. Reverend Tiffany, appearing in clerical garb, was a sign of welcome and hospitality to several folks when she attended a march in Bristol recently. The cheerful cluster of friendly UU faces with our church banner at the Tri-Cities Pride Parade is another way that we open our arms and welcome to others in our wider Tri-Cities community. So, do we now sit back on our laurels or other parts and pat ourselves on the back saying, we done good? True, but that's not how we operate. Now we know we can and we do hospitality daily. It has always been part of our essence as a community. Volunteering for coffee hour or childcare is sacred work. It blesses us all. Let's never be shy about welcoming the stranger, feeding the hungry, loving the lost, and each other. Let us name our work as spiritual practice. We bless ourselves and others as we do our work together.
I have two small stories about two small gestures. When I was a kid, about 9, a stray dog wandered into the yard at home. We lived out in the country. This wasn't a dog I recognized. It was a German Shepherd, a very handsome boy, young and sleek with those intelligent eyes and alert ears. Obviously, he was lost, but he didn't seem too worried about it. He wore a collar, so I cautiously, gingerly approached and took a look at it. Blitzen, what a great name. And the tag had the address of his owner. I tied Blitzen securely to a tree and got him some water. Then I plucked out a page of Blue Horse notebook paper, wrote the owner a letter, and placed it in our mailbox along with 4 pennies for a stamp. I took care of Blitzen, feeding him table scraps. We seemed to like each other. A few days later, seated at my 4th grade desk, the teacher, Miss Ruth with the wavy gray hair, answered a knock on the classroom door. She turned and called me to the door. Puzzled, I shyly approached to see who in the world was asking for me. Nobody had ever been to school to see me. The man at the door identified himself as Blitzen's owner. He said he had picked up Blitzen, but wanted to thank me in person. He had driven quite a bit out of his way to do this. And he handed me $10. I'd never felt so important. So important, I remember it vividly all these years later. I bought my first watch with that $10, something I'd wanted for a long time. But, of course, it wasn't just about the money. The second story about a small gesture takes place about 40 years later, so don't expect Blitzen in this one. I was hiking with 3 women friends in the White Mountains of New Hampshire. We were doing day hikes. This particular day, we were hiking from point A to point B with a car at either end. My pack was bulging with all the necessities. Layers for the ever-changing, often threatening weather that can be encountered there, lots of water, and all the snacks I require. As an afterthought, I tied my oh-so-comfortable Teva sandals to the outside of the pack so I could change out of my heavy boots when I got to the car. The White Mountains have some difficult terrain. Sometimes we were scrambling up boulders and scooting on our butts down the other side. Eventually, we took a welcome break for lunch at a lovely spot. When I slipped off my pack, I realized, no, my sandals are gone. No doubt they had come off when my pack scraped against one of those boulders. I hate to lose things. Plus, I loved those sandals with the patterned Velcro straps. They were really popular, and I knew another hiker would feel lucky to make such a find. But just in case, I bummed a small scrap of paper and a pen from another hiker, scratched out a note, and impaled it on a trailside bush, knowing it would soon disappear in the wind or the rain. We had quite an adventure those days in the Whites. I returned home pockmarked with hundreds of black fly bites and a tale to tell Rolla of summiting Mount Washington, home to the world's worst weather. It's true. Near the top, the wind was a steady 85 miles per hour, which meant we could not stand up. We crawled over ice-glazed rocks the last few hundred feet. The temperature was 29, and it was the first day of June. After my stories, I came back to the practical, and I asked, "Did I get any mail?" "Yeah," he said, "some envelopes and a box." I sliced through the tape to open the box. Wow, inside the box were my Tevas. My lost sandals had made it home before I had. Someone had found them and then my note and really gone out of their way to get them back to me. If it was an Appalachian Trail through hiker, one that's walking all the way from Georgia to Maine, it meant going off trail, finding packaging and a post office, and money for postage. If it was a day hiker or a section hiker, it was still a big deal. They did not know me, and yet I was important. So for me, it's not just the radical hospitality, it's the random acts of kindness and the small gestures, the cup of tea and a chat, the smile and the listening, the kindness to a child for a small good deed, the return of old but special sandals. It's the making someone feel important that creates hospitality.
A few weeks ago, I walked into a board meeting to find that we had 3 new members appointed by the city. Yeah, 3 more middle-aged white guys. Sigh. And in the course of the next 10 minutes, it became clear to me that these were not just any 3 middle-aged white guys. These were more guys that are on the inside track. These guys were already known to this homogenous board. They go to the same gym, church, golf course. They have the same professional networks. Now, I've been on that board for 5 years, but within minutes, I was feeling as though I was an outsider and I didn't belong. The meeting started with introductions, and after I said mine, my fellow Washington County Commissioner, also appointed to the board along with me, Freddie Malone, sitting to my left, definitely a guy on the inside track, took his turn. He said his name and a few things, and then finished with, "And I have the pleasure of serving on the Washington County Commission with Commissioner Jones," and he gestured to me. Who knows if anyone in that room noticed or cared about that gesture? But when I was acknowledged in that way, I felt myself begin to reclaim a sense of space and belonging in the room. Commissioner Malone has a way with radical hospitality. I have studied him across all kinds of meetings and situations and have found him to be so genuine, so perfectly focused on others, so easy with small talk and big talk and all the in-between kinds of talk. He engages the guys that I think of as sort of the insiders just as much as he takes the time with everyone else, perhaps an older gentleman in a wheelchair tucked into the corner of a busy meeting room. Hi, I don't believe we've ever met. I'm Freddie Malone. The gentleman glows, he speaks, and Freddie leans in to hear. I watch him. He's not in a hurry. He's not glancing around. He spends a lot of time in full and frenzied rooms, and still he is always doing these conversations just right. I'm so envious of his ability to do this. And sometimes in my envy, I ascribe his ease and skill to his privilege as a white male of some affluence and education and reputation. Of course, being an insider makes it easy for him to walk into a room with confidence. Of course, he isn't distracted by all of his inner dialogue like I am about whether he's welcome or whether he belongs. Of course, it's easy for him. But as part of our radical hospitality group, I was really forced to reflect on this further. And one of the things I realized is that while it may be easier for him, he does not own the privilege of welcoming others. I asked myself, what would it look like for me to offer the same size, shape, etc. of welcome, offer my own genuine warmth and interest to others the same way he does, just even when I'm not feeling it, right? When I'm not feeling at ease and I'm not feeling I belong. Could I do that? Could I still do that? I have set an intention to welcome others even when I am off balance or uncomfortable in spaces, even though it's definitely hard. Offering hospitality when I feel like I'm not feeling like I belong is an ongoing experiment. But it seems a singular action to claim a kind of power, not a political power for my own use, but a social power that sends a ripple effect through the others. And a social power that is spread from one to another, one that allows all comers to claim their space in a room. That seems to me to be at the heart of equity, diversity, and inclusion.
Hospitality as the power of love. What you offer to others, you experience inside yourself. So let's experiment. I invite you to stop for a moment, to close your eyes even, and think for a moment of a person that you love. Silently and with a full heart, wish that person well. And it's okay if nobody comes to mind and you're just thinking for a moment how grateful you are for your home or your job or what you can do and your health. But just think well of someone or something and notice how you feel inside. When and if we wish others well, we tend to well up inside with warm feelings of comfort. If we offer gratitude, we tend to feel grateful and blessed. So this is the welcoming power of love that we can offer to ourselves. So here's one way to practice this powerful offering all week. Wish people well, many times a day. Do this silently from your heart while you're driving. That person in the car, that person. When you're standing in line, that person behind you. Passing random people on the street, notice how you're feeling when you're doing this. Notice what you are offering to the world as well as to yourself. And I wish each of you well this coming week and beyond.
A moment for some announcements. We thank you for being our guests with us, both in person and virtually today. Reverend Tiffany will be out of the office, tending to her family's needs this week. She expects to be back at work and handling emails and calls on the 16th. If you have urgent church needs this week, contact our board president, Ann Johnson. And next week's guest speaker will be our own Rosemary, who will explore growing up Catholic and coming to grips with the concept of guilt. Looking forward to it, Rosemary. There won't be coffee hour today. You've heard that already. Reverend Tiffany and Sarah White are offering a fall religious education workshop called Owning Our Religious Past. This is for people who are wanting to examine their own past religious connections in a way that invites us to bring the positive elements of those experiences forward and release those that need to be left behind. The workshop will provide some simple tools for processing personal experiences, some with group sharing and some through private exploration. More on that on the web. The 4 sessions will be 4 Sunday afternoons, 12:30 to 2:30, so keep that in mind as you look into your fall plans. Our benediction is actually printed on the back of your order of service, and it would be lovely if we could read it together. This is from Shantideva, who's an 8th century Buddhist monk. It starts, and join me, may I become at all times, both now and forever, a protector of those without protection, a guide to those who have lost their way, a ship for those with oceans to cross, a sanctuary for those in danger, a lamp for those without light, a place of refuge for those who lack shelter, and a servant to all in need. For as long as space endures, and for as long as living beings remain, until then, may I too abide to dispel the misery of the world. Go in peace.